Hello and welcome to the post-match from the Merseyside derby at Goodison Park, which ended Everton nil, Liverpool nil. Quite a fascinating game. Lots happened before it, lots happened, no doubt, after it as well. That we'll find information out about the way in which these things tend to happen, which is quite sad. The way the clubs face each other and the way the fans of each club can be. Not the nicest of circumstances as well, given what's happened in and around the city in recent weeks and months. But we'll crack on by starting and talking hopefully most of this podcast about the game itself. Um, Everton picked up a point. Pete McFarlane's with me as always. Pete, what did you make of? What was your initial feeling when that game finished 0-0? Because I never in my wildest dreams before this game started thought I'd be sitting at the end, sort of a bit gutted that we didn't take all 3 points. And the main two reasons for that for me the Connor Cody disallowed goal for offside, which is about as interpreted as muddy water with VAR and whatnot. And also the other thing that I'd probably put at the top of my list, just ahead of that Cody goal being disallowed, was Neil Maupay's miss. I say miss, he just hit it straight towards Alisson and goal for them. And the amount of times, I mean, I've got it, you've got it. It's almost like my the image of my face on all of my social media because I keep on looking at it too often of where I'm screaming at him still. Simply, there's two things you could do. One, just put it in any sort of loft on it. I don't know if
Yeah,
anybody remembers this, but in 2000 and I'm going to say it was 2006. It was the year when we beat them 3-0 at Goodison, but we also went
yeah.
to Anfield at the start of 2007. It would have been then, I think, when Andy Johnson was with us, and he had a gilt edge one-on-one chance with Pepe Reina, and tries to hit it across him. He's dived one way, he tries to hit it the other way, but doesn't hit it. If he hits it like I don't know half a foot higher, it goes in, but he keeps it out
Mm.
with his leg. I don't know if anyone remembers that. I do remember such horrible things. You know when we should have won against them.
Yeah,
And that reminded me so much of yesterday's what happens with Mopai. And every time I look at this specific image that I've got, Onana is standing on his own, a yard because they've got like two players who are almost behind on the same line
mm.
as Alisson, and I'm like, it looked too easy, you know. And me and you played obviously amateur level football, and I'm sure many people who are listening to this have as well. And it was devastating. And the thing is, I don't want that to do away. And I know I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, mate, because you haven't even spoke yet. But um, I don't want it to rule out how decent of a debut of it was for Mopai, by the way. But we'll get onto that in a second. But yeah, given what they missed, given how well Pickford was, I think the narrative's very easy for media. If you didn't watch this game, which you're probably not going to be an Everton fan or a Liverpool fan, saying that Pickford was man of the match does not tell the whole story of this game at all, does it?
No, not at all. It really doesn't. And Pickford does deserve praise and credit for his performance. I mean, but bear in mind we're playing against one of the best teams in the league, if not Europe. So they're always going to create chances, and it's all about those moments. Pickford really stood up, and I think as well when you bear in mind that he hasn't had. He's had a bit of a rough time in previous derbies. He's also had some very good performances in derbies, but there has been one or two mistakes
The
that
one
he's
that's
made.
always in the one that's always in everyone's head is what happened at Anfield, the time when they scored in the last
Yeah,
94th minute, whatever it was. They made T-shirts about that and all that. I think that's in what is in many people's heads. And it took him
mm,
a long, long time as a goalkeeper for us to basically turn around and become what he is effectively now, and that is a world-class goalkeeper that's England's number one.
absolutely. And do you know what the thing about it is as well is that if anyone's ever in doubt as to why he is England's number one and why he should continue to be England's number one, it's that performance yesterday. But again, like you say, it doesn't tell the full story because there were performances like that all over the pitch. I couldn't pick out a player who didn't perform, well yesterday. Even Tom Davis, I know Tom Davis has got his detractors, myself included. In the past, I think Tom Davis, to be fair to him, I think he played exceptionally well in the time he was on the pitch. he was unfortunate as well when he hit the post. That was another moment, one of those moments where what could have been. But I think the ball dropped to him quite quickly, and he had to adjust. He didn't really have time to adjust his feet. He had to sort of lash at it with the outside of his foot, and it's inches away from being an absolute, storming of a goal in the derby. So, but as I say, the performance is all over the pitch. I was proud of our players, and the difference between going into that derby yesterday and going into the derby last season, where I think last season we went into that game and I genuinely thought we're going to get battered here, and we did. It was, the atmosphere was flat. I think everyone had sort of, there was the whole thing with Benitez. I think we were all sort of so deflated that it didn't really feel like a derby to me. It was almost like, well, let's just get this out the way. Whereas yesterday, I do feel that we've turned a bit of a corner, and I think the performance that the players have put in, and the energy that the players showed, and the fact that we actually went toe to toe with them as well, which was great to see, because there's been too many derbies in the past where we might have snatched a 0-0, but I don't think we've really shown what we can do going forward and actually going at them. Whereas yesterday, I mean, there was a spell in the second half where there was about a 10-minute spell where it was literally end to end. I've never seen it. It was like watching tennis. It was just going from one end to the other. They get a corner, then we break, then we get a corner, then they break, and it was back and forward. And it was a really exciting match. I don't think, again, 0-0 doesn't tell you the full story about the game. I think, the fact is, let's be honest, Liverpool haven't had the best start of the season, but they have got so many dangerous players all over the pitch and so many top class players. For us to have gone and actually properly had a go at them, I don't think many teams will do that to them this season. And it's just unfortunate that we couldn't quite get that goal. And obviously the Cody offside was, again, another decision which is so tight, where I've seen different angles. Some angles it looks offside, some angles it looks that it's onside. There's angles that show that Milner probably got a touch on it, which I've heard different variations of that rule. That's one that says that apparently if Milner attempts to make the tackle and gets the ball, then that negates the offside. What it comes down to is that at the moment we're seeing far too many of these decisions which are ambiguous. And I thought the whole point of VAR was supposed to be for clear and obvious errors.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, at the moment, we're seeing, and not just in our game yesterday, there were decisions all over the Premier League yesterday, which define the games, which were innocuous things, innocuous challenges, innocuous decisions, which went far from clear and obvious. And unfortunately, we were on the rough end of another decision yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think it's important that we say that, like, the narrative we're not trying to suggest here is all about the plucky Everton aren't we really unlucky because a big six side in the Premier League has got all the decisions and things like that. Whilst those incorrect decisions probably definitely have cost us the 3 points. I don't think there's much doubt in that. The Virgil van Dijk foul that he puts in on that is a blatant, obvious red card. And if anybody, I wasn't actually at the game because I share my season ticket these days. It wasn't my turn to have it, so I was sat watching it on BT Sport. The coverage, I think, is quite astonishing on that program sometimes. Commentary team, Steve McManaman. Anyway, people know all that stuff with Steve McManaman and whatnot, and the way in which he commentates. Jermaine Genius didn't do them any favours either in the commentary. When I have no idea why two professional footballers are saying that that's a yellow card, because if that happened to them when they were playing, they'd be absolutely fuming that the person that inflicted that on them hasn't gone off. The worst thing about it, though, Pete, and I don't know if you've seen this, you'll have seen the tweets since and in the social media about what Peter Walton said, the former Premier League referee, was saying that the reason why it's only a yellow card is because he's put his studs onto the shins. But this is the worst part. The foot has gone down his shin into Onana's foot, and that means that it's a yellow and not a red. So, what he's saying is, in other words, I'm thinking that. So the next time we see a player stud someone's foot, obviously I'm not saying he blamed to do it, Van Dijk. It's just a bad tackle. He's trying to win the ball. He's not done it vindictively. I don't want to go that far as saying that. I know a lot of people would love us to say that, but I personally didn't think that was the case. Yeah, doing the ball completely cocks it up. But if it had gone the other way round, therefore, by saying what I've just said, Peter Walton said, he's then saying that if Van Dijk put his stud, basically a lesser type of tackle, put his foot into Onana's, the bottom of his foot, and it slides up his shin, he said that's when it's a red card. And I was there at home. I'm sitting with my missus next to me. She's not a big football fan at all. And I was looking at her and I was saying, have I just heard that? And I basically paused it, rewound it a couple of times before I went back to, obviously, the regular moments of the game was live. And I was like, that is absolutely crazy. I don't think I've heard such nonsense before. Not let alone, I think it actually, Walton's ridiculous comments did a favour to Genus and McManaman by taking them out of it with their comment being bad enough, saying that it wasn't a red. Him saying that it should have been a red as a previous Premier League referee was pure insanity. And it's obviously not going to happen because he's a pundit now and it doesn't work that way. But that's the type of thing I think that we see far too often in this game, where the Premier League referees, the people who do the VAR jobs, down in Stoke way, isn't it? People who do that these days, it sort of completely shows why there needs to be some sort of, reply from them. They need to explain why they've made those decisions, because there's no way anybody who's watched that sport, played that sport, even if they're not a sports fan and saw what that happened there, would even say that was a challenge that didn't merit somebody being sent off for.
Oh, absolutely. And do you know what as well? The thing about referees and about the whole system, if you like, is that there is no accountability. The referees don't even come on TV. In my opinion, the easiest way to sort this is to just say, right, okay, after every game, the same way a manager has to do an interview, the same way a player has to do an interview. And a lot of the times, managers get themselves into trouble, by the way, by saying things in the heat of the moment because of disgraceful decisions by officials. Now, for me, if you want to try and build the bridges between the fans, between the managers, between the players and the referees, it's very simple. Just interview them after the game. This whole idea that referees are untouchable and that they have no accountability to anyone, that just it accentuates this idea that they are untouchable and that they almost have their own little club and that they're in their own little bubble and they can basically get away with and make decisions however they want, instead of actually applying the rules of the game. And when you've got former referees, Dave McGallagher's another one. I've seen him numerous times.
Well, it'll be fun seeing what he says tomorrow morning on Sky.
Oh, and he will, and come out. I'm yet to see him actually come out and genuinely criticise a referee, even with the most blatant of errors. I'm yet to see him actually, and sometimes he might go as far as saying, "Oh well, I can see it either way," or I can,
or he'd say, "I wouldn't make that decision. I'd have made the difference." That's the most you'll ever get.
But you'll never get, no, that's a disgraceful decision. That was a red card all day. You just don't see it. And again, it just, if you got the referees in front of a camera after the game and got them to explain their decisions and their mindset and their thought process, then I might turn around and think, oh, right, okay, well, I can see where you're coming from there. And I might actually let him off a little bit. I might not agree with him, but at least I could see his mindset and the way he's made the decision. And also, the other thing that we just want to see is consistency. Because that type of tackle, if that was an Everton player yesterday on a Liverpool player and he got sent off, I wouldn't have any complaints. I genuinely would have been like, I might have been thinking, oof, I'd put me blue tinted glasses on and be like, oh, it's a bit harsh. But let's be honest, if that happened to an Everton player, you'd go, oh, you idiot. Because you just think, with the way that the game is now, that type of challenge is the type of challenge you see a red card straight away all across Europe every week. And again, I mean, there were other decisions as well, though, Dave. There were things. I've seen the replay of Dwight McNeil's shot which I didn't actually realise at the time. I knew it had taken a deflection. But
Two
when you look at the
deflections, wasn't
replay,
it? One was
it comes
it's an hand, isn't it?
yeah, Milner puts his arm, literally sticks his arm out, and it comes off his elbow, and that's what makes it loop over Alisson, who then tips it over. But when you look at that again, it's clear and obvious. The referee wouldn't have seen it. The referee couldn't have seen it. Apparently, VAR didn't even check that.
Yeah.
So who makes the
That in
decision on what
England,
they
wasn't
check?
it? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but Jake, I don't even know what the process is in terms of how they decide to check something, because we've seen it time and time again. I mean, obviously we're talking about Everton, and I'm not saying this is just an Everton issue, but we've seen it time and time again where we've seen replays after games and gone, how haven't they picked that up? We can't see it in real time. We're in the stands. We might not necessarily see every handball or every pull or every foul, but they're sat there with however many monitors, and surely that's just their job to do it. And I just don't
I see it.
understand.
Well, like I said to you, I'm sitting at home having to watch the game yesterday, and I
Yeah,
can see it. I can rewind it, and I've got one television. They have multiple televisions and sources to look at,
yeah,
multiple people to discuss, so-called professionals to discuss. It's absolutely infuriating. And then lo and behold, the irony of it is we didn't get the winner from Cody's goal because there was a marginal offside decision made because they have so much technology to look at. Well, if you're using the technology to make a decision, then fair enough. If he's offside, then it's correct. Then yeah, okay. The referee says it is. You resume the game and whatnot. But for that not to be the case when you're seeing something in the exact same light, that you decide not to make the decision that it should be. That's what makes it so infuriating. And also, you made the point there about VAR being accountable, and I'm almost certain this season it was supposed to be, they do come out and have a chat about it or something like that, or there's meant to be, they release a statement as to why they made a particular decision. I don't think I've seen any of that so far this season. It's one of them things that reminds me a lot of that time. Remember Niasse was he sent off, or he
yeah,
was carded, wasn't he? Away at Palace, was it?
yeah. Palace, yeah.
For player, what did he do? Oh, that was because he tried to win a penalty, didn't he, and dived basically,
Well, we actually won the penalty, scored it, and then they retrospectively said that
and then
he
banned him.
basically
Yeah,
conned the referee. Yeah,
that's
he'd said that he'd won the penalty. But actually, when you look back at it, you see those penalties get given all the time now.
well,
So
I don't know if you've seen this weekend. I don't know if you watched Match of the Day last night. People, but the goals that were disallowed for West Ham at
oh,
Chelsea, and the worst one for me of the weekend. Not just ours with the red card that Van Dijk should have had, but also the goal that Newcastle were disallowed, where
mm,
they whip a corner in. I'm not sure if it was Isaac, one of their lads, jumps up to head the ball and put it in from about 5 yards out. He's being shoved into the goalkeeper by a Palace defender. I think it was Mitchell, and scores still, but it's been disallowed for the foul against the goalkeeper that he didn't do. He was pushed into him. It was just insane, and it's amateur and it's embarrassing.
it is
But anyway,
embarrassing. And
go on.
yeah, I mean the West Ham disallowed goal as well. I thought that was an absolute joke. It was a similar. I don't see where Jared Bowen is supposed to put his foot. He
Yeah,
literally touches Mendy with a toenail. That Mendy obviously makes the most of it and makes a big deal of it because he's messed up. He's come
it's not
out
even
for
a
the
foul
ball.
anyway, though. That's the thing.
It's not a foul in any way, shape, or form. It's a contact sport at the end of the day.
Yeah,
And Mendy, they're both going for the ball. Mendy gets there first. If Bowen's plants his foot, then I can see you can say yeah, fair enough. But Bowen clearly makes an effort to jump over him. There's the slightest bit of contact. The referee didn't give a foul, so VAR have then called that back. I don't see how that is clear and obvious in any way, shape, or form. Mendy's obviously made the most of it and stayed down to bring attention to it. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like it's as I say, it's a contact sport. Both players have gone for that ball. The ball was loose. And Bowen has made a physical effort to jump over him and made the slightest touch on him. There's not a chance. There's no chance whatsoever that goal should have been disallowed. And we're only talking about one weekend, Dave. And look how many decisions
yeah. Yeah,
you
we
can
just
you
spent
can bring up.
20 minutes talking about, and the thing is though, it's like David Moyes will be punished for his comments that he said to the BBC after that. When he's doing his post-match comments, um,
Yeah,
he'll be punished for that because he's been so angry about it. These are people's jobs. You know what I mean?
yeah,
West Ham have had a worse start than us this season. Um,
yeah,
he could potentially get sacked based on the fact that they didn't pick up at least a point where they probably earned it because of a joke of a decision. And the thing is, I always say that everyone ends up having a chat with Mike Riley these days, don't they? He's still head of the PGMOL, isn't he? And people who are involved in that now, and I think Mike Dean's involved with it now, isn't he? He's got a job there now as well. You're like, oh, there always seems it comes out in the news. Oh, they clarified something with them. Okay, fine, they clarified it. They've accepted having a chat. They probably accepted that the decision that was made by the referee at the time was wrong. But then nothing happens from it. It's just it's like basically it's worth as much to them. Like if they listen to our podcast, they're not going to care what a couple of Evertonians are saying about it. They'll listen to us. They might well think, you know what, that lad's got a point. They're not going to do anything to say, okay, well, what's the difference we're going to make? That final decision making thing, that final chance to change things for the right, is not
mm,
going to happen because they've, in their eyes, they think they've done their job by, we'll have a chat with them, we'll tell them, well, if anything, we'll apologise. But that doesn't
yeah,
mean things are going to change. That's just admitting that it was wrong, but he's still
yeah,
going to suffer the consequences, not them.
yeah,
Um, quite baffling anyway. But we'll go back into the game, and I think there was a lot of positivity for the Blues yesterday at Goodison against Liverpool. It looked like a very different Everton approach to it. I was just looking at the stats as well. I looked at a lot of the stats last night because obviously I think there was a lot of criticism and piss taken after the derby that we lost 2-0 at Anfield in April.
yeah,
Um, and it was the people were laughing about the possession that we had 18%. We finished out 18%, but they had 92% possession, 82% possession against us and completely dominated the game. The fact we only lost 2-0, I think many, probably including myself, would say we should have lost more. Probably should have scored as well, probably should have had a pen, but that's another time for that decision. The way that decision was made not to
yeah,
give a pen against, I don't know if anybody remembers it, I think presumably do when Anthony Gordon goes down and should be given a penalty and isn't. Again, that is added to the narrative that people have against decisions that seem to be made against the top six, and I'd be astonished if we don't see at some point that there's stat companies and analysis and people like that who've actually started reviewing and writing all of these things and coming up with the numbers that suggest that there's a
yeah,
bias towards various clubs in this league. I'd be astonished if we don't see that at some point. But anyway, looking at the match stats here on the BBC where I work, possession 39% possession. We had there 61%. That's pretty much what you're going to get, given the way they play and given how good they are. And listen, I think I've often been criticised over the years that I'm far too sympathetic towards Liverpool, which I don't think I am. I'm just basically what I see my perception of things are I think are quite fair. Um, and we had 14 shots. Only 3 shots on target. 14 shots against them for us to do. I would not have expected that to have been the case. They had 23. They had 8 on target. Similar amount of corners, 7-9 fouls. Seven. This astonished me. 7 fouls from us, 11 from them.
mm,
Now, I personally, and I'm certain they would be banging on about how much that we'd be trying to kick them all over the place. I thought Everton's performance was something that Frank Lampard and everybody else in the staff should take heart from and really use it to inspire them about what's coming up. Because we've got a tough run of fixtures coming up. I was looking today, there's 10 games between now and the start of this crazy World Cup that's going to be
mm,
started towards the end of November. Tough fixtures, obviously next week away at Arsenal. Yeah, I think we'll need our that's for that. But the performance I thought was a real um, blueprint for me to think that this was decent. This is what I want to see from Everton. The way in which we we absorbed a lot of their possession, yes, and obviously they had more possession than us. But when we were on the ball, I thought the midfield was really good. I couldn't help but feel after it, Pete, that had we got to a stage where this match happened, say maybe 2, 3, or 4 down the line in the 10 that we have remaining until this World Cup, I'd have expected us to have even done better than we did yesterday, because I thought Onana was really good. He was growing into it. He's still got lots to learn about playing in this division. I think there's a little bit of rawness about him. But when I thought Tom Davis was absolutely fine. He was the concern for me. Personally, at the start of it, I said I'd put Garner straight in, and it'd be him, Onana, and Iwobi as the midfield three, which I was really looking forward to seeing. That looks quite tasty to me, that. Yeah. That's what we ended the game in. Second half, he decides to throw Garner on. Garner looked like, I thought he looked like a Rolls Royce of a player when he come on the pitch, Pete, because yes, we loved him when he was here with us anyway, and we were gutted that he left 3 years ago. But he's come back, having played 3 years in a lesser division, but with world-class professionals like Neymar, eventually like Messi for a bit as well, Mbappe, world-class midfield players, and you could really, really tell that when he come on. I thought he was absolutely brilliant, and I think that three that we finished with in midfield, because Iwobi was great as well. Again, Iwobi is just in his own field, I think, these days now. I don't worry him being in the pitch. I think he's probably the first name on the team sheet. Looking at those three and the way in which they finished the game, I think Klopp and their gang would have been looking at us thinking, I wasn't expecting them to be this good today. And yes, I know they had a lot of injuries. I know Carvalho, who they started with. I looked at their midfield and I thought, you know what, we can match them and get past them with this. And I think we did, by and large, win the midfield battle. But there were so many positives there. Back four looked fine. Nathan Patterson is going to be a superstar. I know. Again, just to refer to them, they've got Robertson over the park. This fella looks to me like he's got all the tools to walk past them. I know he doesn't play in the same position; he plays on the opposite sides of fullback, but he looks like a real superstar for Scotland.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think again, you could see from the opening minutes with Patterson as well. He really enjoyed the derby atmosphere. He's played in Old Firm games before for Rangers, and you could see that he settled straight into that atmosphere. And again, going into the game, we're talking about concerns with some of the players. I actually went into yesterday feeling quietly confident. One of the things, and sort of one of the turning points for me in terms of the performance yesterday, was not just the possession stats in terms of what we did with the ball, but it's how much more comfortable we look without it. So last season at Anfield, we were, like you say, we hardly had the ball, but we found it very difficult to get on the ball. We also looked very vulnerable when Liverpool were in possession. Yesterday, I actually felt really confident. As the game progressed, you could see us growing into the game as well in terms of actually, really attacking them and launching these counter-attacks. But even when we sat back, we just looked so much more organised. Conor Cody and James Tarkowski at the back. Mykolenko did a job on Salah again. I think, to be fair to Mykolenko, he did that at Anfield. He was brilliant at Anfield last season. But Mykolenko, I thought, was solid. But like you say, Patterson was phenomenal. One thing I like about Patterson as well is that he's underrated in terms of how good he is in the air as well. And I feel like Liverpool tried to target him certainly earlier on. They tried to target him with Núñez. So they were trying to put balls into the back post. And even if he doesn't necessarily win the headers, Patterson, he gets in very good positions to put him off. So actually, when you look at, there was a couple of chances, sort of half chances that Núñez had. Patterson was just doing just enough to put him off. And I've got really high hopes for that lad. And like you say, the midfield three as well, whether it was starting with Davis, Iwobi, and Onana, and then later on in the game, Garner coming on. I think that amount of energy that we've got in the middle of the park now, it's so different to last season. It's so different. This transfer window has absolutely transformed this team for me. we look so much more solid at the back, but it's the energy that we've now got across the pitch. Again, go back to Connor Cody and Tarkowski. What was great to see yesterday as well was that they were in the ear of the referee. The amount of times I've seen derbies over the years, where their players have been at the referee from minute one, in the referee's ear, haven't given him a moment's rest, and they pretty much referee the game themselves. Yesterday, when Onana got booked, James Tarkowski went over to the referee and he was on him for a good 5 minutes, asking him why he hadn't previously booked Tsimikas, the Liverpool left back, after he'd done 3 fouls in a row within about 5 minutes. And Tarkowski wouldn't let it go. And I love that, because I thought finally we've got a team who are actually going to stand up and go toe to toe, not just with the opposition, but with the referees as well. And they're not going to give them a moment's peace, just the same way that you see other teams doing it. And we've been too nice for too long, and it was just great to see yesterday. But that's not to say that we were in any way sort of dirty, or we weren't being, it wasn't like that type of derby where there was loads of tackles going in, and it was almost like, bringing it down to a certain level. Both teams actually went toe to toe. Both teams attacked each other, and I thought overall, by and large, the game was a very sort of open. Well, say open. It was end to end. But I think, as I say, for me, I didn't get the impression yesterday. I didn't feel that feeling of utter dread that a goal was coming from them. I felt that we controlled the game very well, even without the ball. And again, that goes. There's got to be credit to Frank Lampard as well, going to 4 at the back in the last game and then sticking with that in the derby. Personally, I feel that that's the way to go. I like to have the extra man in midfield just for the energy. And I think because, again, the amount of teams in the Premier League now who play with that 3, I think that we find that we get overrun far too easily when we play 3 at the back. I'd rather have the extra man in midfield. So that was good to see yesterday. I hope that that's the way the way things are going forward. But yeah, overall, I thought the performance was outstanding. And Neil Maupay as well. I know he missed the chance. I saw a stat this morning that I think he ran 11.1 kilometres. He put the most yards in of any of our players. And I thought he led the line really well. And he will get goals. He gets himself in good positions. I don't think he's one of them who's a natural finisher where he's gonna finish every chance he gets. But I just think that because of his movements, because of the type of tenacity that he's got as a player, he'll get himself in positions, and I think he will score goals.
Well, playing like you've just said, just to continue from what you were saying there about the midfield area, I think playing a back 4. Look, I think that the 2 games that we played this week, away at Leeds, home to Liverpool, you're not going to get much more difficult games. I know Leeds have been down there themselves, but going away to Leeds is a difficult place to go to. As the atmosphere they create, it's famous for that. Liverpool, as we know, it's hard to say, isn't it? You hate to say it, but how good they are as a side, the players they have, world class players. To do what we've done against them, I think it's taught Frank Lampard a hell of a lot. But the most important thing, and I'll reiterate it again, I said it after Leeds, that having Connor Cody as a player who can comfortably defend in a back 4, which is ironically the reason that Wolves got rid of him, because they felt he probably couldn't do so as well as he needed him to, where they played with a back 5 regularly enough. I think he's just basically showed 2 fingers to them straight away. And I think he looks fantastic as a centre back, playing in a back 4. And I think it was probably did him a disservice for anybody who thought that he wasn't able to do so. And I'll admit it, I was concerned about that. I thought this means we automatically have to play with 3 central defenders, because he's just used to that. He likes to play as a skipper and whatnot. Maybe he's more comfortable doing it, but he's proven that he's an absolutely top-class central defender in any sort of formation. And that, like you say there, I think it was going 4-3-3. Certainly made me think differently when Calvert-Lewin's back in the next couple of weeks. But that, to me, is something that is a really positive step forward for us, that we're able to do that. So yeah, what's coming up next, Pete, is the fact that we've got Arsenal away, and then I think we got West Ham home after that, and then there's a international break. Like I said, the 10 run of games, I'll explain to them in a second what's coming up. But just to sort of talk around and conclude the derby itself, I think that level of performance that we were able to do. And look, I know this, and I've had so many arguments with Reds, as you'd probably expect anyway, by saying that like it was, and they want to hit us back. And make no mistake about that. They want to try and take the piss back towards us, because they want to take the piss that we've generally felt happy coming away with a draw at home against them. But I'm happy we've come away with a draw against them. I don't particularly care. It's because of how poor they've been, and how shoddy the start of the season's been so far from them. More to the point that things have looked so difficult in regards to how long we took to complete our transfer. Still banging on, and I certainly was towards the end of the transfer window that we still need. I thought we were still short of another forward. But by and large, what we saw against them, I think, has given us a lot of positivity and optimism towards the common fixtures that we've got. Because, like you said about Mopai, and I did want to talk about him a little bit more, was the lad hasn't played for a while. He's been out, hasn't he? He was out injured for a bit. I think as well, if you look at what's going on at Brighton, I think they've got probably the hottest property of management in world football right now. And I don't think I'm saying that, I'm going too far by saying that. In Graham Potter, I think he's an absolute superstar of a manager. I think it's quite obvious where he'll eventually, at some point, probably in the near future, get his choice of picks of where he wants to go next. And I don't mean by saying, oh, I want to be the Real Madrid manager and whatnot. I think he'll have a lot of offers from clubs at the top level. Because I know that we were mooted a lot, weren't we, of going for him when Ancelotti left and when Benitez left. Or was sacked, should I say? I shouldn't say he left; he was sacked. He'd had there were a lot of rumours about Everton approaching him, and I think you're only doing your job if you go for him, because I think he is very much at the top of a lot of people's list of what happens next. For example, if ridiculousness happens at Man United, I don't think it will, because I think Ten Hag's a top-class manager and a top-class operator. They seem to be going in the right direction now after that win against Liverpool. But for instance, you wouldn't surprise you if, say, look what happened with Chelsea. They very narrowly got the 3 points, is what we explained about what happened there with VAR at the end of that game. But Tuchel, you could see him being in trouble had they lost that, because they lost away Southampton, didn't he? Wouldn't surprise me at all. Chelsea go in for him. Wouldn't surprise me at all if, I know, Arsenal are flying, got rid of Arteta and went in for him. There aren't any clubs, or certainly aren't many clubs, I don't think, who won't go for him. I think Brendan Rodgers is about to leave at Leicester, because obviously at the time of recording now, they go away to him at Brighton. It wouldn't surprise me if Rodgers, because they've had a dreadful start, didn't sign any players. You can tell he's been moaning quite a bit as well, Rodgers, that his time might well be up at Leicester. You can imagine Leicester going in for him, but even they might not be able to attract him. So I think he has got that going forward. And for him to have, and I know I've banged on about him a bit there, but for him to have Mopay for several years at Brighton, I think gives me a lot of optimism towards a signing that I wasn't particularly thrilled with. I have to admit, when it looked like we were getting him, I thought he's a workhorse, isn't he? He absolutely loves to, and you've seen that, you mentioned there with the stat that the club released with 11.1 kilometres, wasn't it, that he did yesterday? A thankless task in many ways, the system that we had against the side that will have more possession than you. He ran himself into the ground. And aside from what I've said about crying about his miss, I think he was really, really good. I think he did everything you need him to do in that position. I think the one thing is the reason why he's with us more so than anything else is the lack of goals that he bags. And I know many people have said to me, made the argument that, well, he scores exactly the same amount as Richarlison did for us. Richarlison offers us so much else. That side of it is what Mopai did yesterday. I think it gave me a lot of confidence in him, Pete.
Yeah, he did. He showed that side to his game, which I think that we've been lacking so far this season. Just having a focal point. There was a number of times where he actually held the ball up really well against two very, very big centre halves that the Liverpool have. But again, it's just the energy and the effort that he puts in, and the fact that he can actually lead the line. And it'd be interesting to see him playing. When Calvert-Lewin gets back fully fit as well. If he can even play off Calvert-Lewin. I think one of the things that I feel like we have lacked massively over the past couple of seasons is energy and real sort of energy with intent, not just running, not just headless chickens. I mean, people who press at the right time and people who will put defenders on the back foot and when we can actually press as a unit. And I feel like Maupay has got he does have that in him. Like I said earlier on, I think he will miss chances, but the thing is, with any forwards, I'd rather them missing chances than not getting any. And I feel like Maupay, because of his work rate and his efforts, he will get himself in good positions, and I think the goals will come. But again, I just Alex Iwobi is sort of the benchmark for me in terms of what energy and what effort can do to sort of to change a perception of a footballer. Alex Iwobi looked lost for me for a good 2.5 years since Frank Lampard's come in. It doesn't even matter where he's played. He's just given absolutely everything for the shirt, and not only does that help him in terms of his confidence, but the crowd get behind. Evertonians, we're very easy to please in a sense, Evertonians, because if we see a player giving absolutely everything for us, we'll back you all day. And that goes back years. We've had players who with far lesser ability who we've taken under our wing because we've seen them giving everything for us. And I think Alex Iwobi again has set the benchmark. And I think Maupay will be another one of those players, almost like a Stephen Naismith type, where his energy, his effort, and that fight that he shows, it will endear himself to the Evertonians. And again, I just feel like the goals will come. I've seen him score goals in the past for Brighton. I've seen him miss chances for them, but I do believe that the goals will come for him. And as long as he's putting in effort and he's giving everything for that badge, I'm sure he's a player that we can all get behind, and a player we'll enjoy seeing playing for us.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think it'd be interesting to see what like I said, we were saying before, weren't we? That 4-3-3 system really seems to suit us, and given saying what Cody's capable of and is playing in a natural form and defence. The thing that I think is interesting that we'll see when Calvert-Lewin comes back, hopefully sooner rather than later, because he is the goal scorer that we have. He is the goal scorer that we need as well. And that's not to deter from Maupay, but I do think that is what he lacks. And that is effectively why we've got him. Given that, I think there'd be clubs ahead of us going for him if he bagged, 15, 20 a season. I don't think we'd have been able to get him. So, it's something that he needs to work on. What is he, 26, 27? He's still a player that can improve on that as well, And he's let's face it, he's a bit of a snide as well. That's what he is replacing in terms of Richarlison. He loves it, absolutely loves it. If you look at sort of the history that he's done when Brighton have played their derbies against Crystal Palace, he absolutely loves being a snide. He loves sort of, throwing his face towards the opposition and all that. He will not shy away, which is great. We need exactly that type of thing when we are struggling. One thing I want to ask you though as well, Pete, about this before we sort of conclude with a couple of other little things I wanted to talk about, is when Calvert-Lewin is fit, what are you looking at in that front? If we still say 4-3-3, and you're going with the midfield I suggested, I think it might be quite harsh on Davis because he's done okay, but I would go with the back four we had yesterday. I would then go for a midfield three of Onana, Garner, Idrissa Garner, not James Garner yet, and the Iwobi. They'd be my three, which is effectively the one we finished the game with. And then front three is where I've got a few, I don't know, little changes, things I'd swap, things I'd look at, moving around a little bit from Frank Lampard and the coaching staff and Paul Clement and whatnot. Would you look at Gray, Calvert-Lewin, Gordon, because we're assuming Gordon starts, and obviously that would mean that Maupay had come from the bench, or would you look at, and the thing that I'm starting to look at, given the form that they've had, because they haven't been great so far, I don't think, with Gray and McNeil. Look, it's fine. It's early season. It's been a tough start. We've only just, settled down in regards to the transfer window and whatnot. McNeil can come good. He's only a kid. Gray, I think the only reason he ended up with us is because of the issues that he's had and the inconsistency he's got. So I would go, or I would look at putting Mopai in a Richarlison-like position. So sort of front left striker role, I think, where he can take to the left a little bit and drive in from there, with Calvert-Lewin obviously in the middle, and then Gordon the other way. They'd be the three I think we'll end up going with.
Yeah, I think one of the great things now is that we do have options, and we can, and each of those players kind of offers something different as well. So I think we'll probably see a lot of rotation in terms of that front three.
Would
Once
you even look at
Calvert-Lewin's
that
back,
being a two as well? The other thing, I think
yeah,
many probably younger fans think that when you get a player like Mopai, you want to see play and start, and you've got Calvert-Lewin. Is there even scope there to look at them two playing together up front?
yeah. I mean, the other thing as well to bear in mind is that Dwight McNeil is another player who I think will benefit hugely once Calvert-Lewin is back in, because I feel like McNeil, because he does have a very, very good left foot, by the way.
Which he
I
nearly
know his
scored with
stats in terms.
yesterday.
Yeah, well, it's I feel like once Calvert-Lewin's back in and he's actually got a proper target to hit, I think we'll probably see the best of McNeil. I think at the moment, again, he's a player. When you saw his stats against Leeds, he put in the most blocks. He'd run the most kilometers. He'd done everything apart from really, sort of get on the ball and really show what he can do in terms of his attacking threat. He obviously had a bit of a cameo yesterday, nearly scored after the dodgy deflection off Milner's arm. But I think that we'll start to see the best of Dwight McNeil once he's properly settled and once he's got Calvert-Lewin in the side as well. But like I say, I mean, in terms of our front line, it is nice to have options, and I mean, Tamari Gray, we saw time and time again yesterday just how good he is on the break. How it was that break where when Maupay had the chance, that all started from Damari Gray on the left hand side, deep in our own half, and he just one little touch and he's away, and we ended up, I think it was like 4-on-3 that we had, and that came from Damari Gray and his ability to break so quickly. So again, that's another attribute that we've got in those options of the forward line. Anthony Gordon as well. He started the season off so brightly. I think in a weird kind of way, I think the link to Chelsea has given him a bit of a confidence boost. He's actually playing now like a top player. He's looking to get on the ball. He's looking to have an impact on the game. So again, he's another fantastic option. Calvert-Lewin. I mean, the other thing about it as well is once Calvert-Lewin's fit, if we've got players who are able to come in and play and start games, it means we don't have to rush Calvert-Lewin back. So we don't have to rely on him too heavily, and he can take his time in terms of getting himself back fully fit. We're not just throwing him back in, which I feel like we did last season. Mm-hmm. We almost panicked to get him back in, and unfortunately that resulted in further injury. But again, I think it'll depend on the opposition. I think it'll depend on how fit Calvert-Lewin is. I think it'll depend on formations. But it's a nice problem to have, Dave, and it's a type of problem that we haven't had for a long time, where I think we've been over reliant on individuals rather than having a very balanced squad. And I feel like now we've actually very quietly, by the way, I think we've gone about our business very well to balance up that squad, to shore ourselves up at the back, to get a midfield full of energy, and to now have options in forward positions.
Yeah, completely agree with that. And it's nice to finish the talk about the game anyway on such a positive note. I think many people will have enjoyed listening to that as well, because you know what, I'm normally a I'm normally a gloomer at the best of times these days, mate. So to conclude the chat about the actual match itself was, I think it'll be very optimistic for people who've listened to what we've said there. But I think you're absolutely spot on. The only gripe is the fact that this wasn't done 6 weeks ago. But I know people say you can't have everything, but that is for a discussion that we've had many other times about the board and what basically it needed to kick up its arse to sort things out. But by and large, am I not saying that this is making me feel much more positive towards the board? But you look at Thelwell, you look at Lampard, you look at the people who have been involved with the recruitment. They've done their job, I think, to a certain extent. I'd like to have seen more. Of course, everybody wants to see more. But it's the fact of when it happens, which I think where you point your fingers towards the board and how, when they've, it seems to me like when someone, when you go to a shop or you're shopping at Argos, you're buying something at Argos or Amazon, and they say to you what you want, and you tell them what you want, and then tells you how long it's going to take for you to get to you. Look, if you've got a Prime account, it'll come to you the next day. But if you don't,
Yeah.
possibly waiting a few weeks down the line. That's how it felt. You know what I mean? And it is something that they still need to improve on, desperately so. Given that, despite the fact I think we've had a positive couple of games now, still awaiting the victory is the concern when you look at the league table. But you know, 10 games to go, up to the World Cup, and then what? Boxing Day at home against Wolves. That'll be really, really interesting. Everyone will feel it's like slightly weird that day, won't they?
It'd be like the first game of the season all over again, won't
Yeah, well,
it?
yeah. And then
That first
sadly,
game feeling.
the one after that, I think, is we go to City on New Year's Eve. So that's
and
fine.
the, and the year on a high, eh?
I know, mate. Yeah, absolutely. Well, my own personal year, mate. I can't wait to get rid of it. So if we do get beat, that's probably quite fitting. But the sort of series note that didn't, I've been on and on in the way in which to discuss this. I think it's important to mention it. Um, the the things we've seen, the horrible things we've seen, the things why I cannot stand the Merseyside derby. And look, when I say that to friends, when I say it to family, most of my family are Reds, most of my friends are Reds. Um, when I say I can't stand the derby, the thing that they automatically, and probably rightly so, are going to say is that's because Everton's record's been appalling throughout most of my lifetime against Liverpool. And I always reply back, I wish that was why I hated it as much. The reason I hate it are the reasons that we saw develop before it.
Yeah.
And I've been quite emotional about this because one of the tweets I put out went quite viral. I think Jamie Carragher was talking about it and retweeted what I said. Was look at the appalling incidents we've seen in our city, and it's been quite literally, right in front of me in terms of what happens with that little girl. That just it's so upsetting. And to live in the community that's sort of 200 yards from her house away. And I thought one thing that I will say was a real positive was how everybody conducted themselves at least for 1 minute in the 90th minute yesterday, applauding what happened with. It was just tragic with young Olivia. And let's hope these mindless idiots, horrible human beings, are brought to justice about this.
Yeah.
And let's hope it points the way in which people live in this city to the right direction. Because look, it was 10 years on from what happened to Reece as well, which is again 3 miles up the road from me in Croxteth. It's a it's a well-known area in Liverpool. The sort of gang culture and whatnot that happens. Look, Liverpool's not the only city with stuff like this happening, but when it's on our doorstep, it's right in the middle of our eyes and faces. That and I don't want to link it directly with some of the horrible scenes that we've witnessed and looked at, and it's been on social media. What happened with the vandalism that happened right outside of Anfield, the actual stadium, with certainly someone who was really close to me before he passed away in St John. His image was vandalised. I think there was some racial comments made on there, and sort of spray painted on it. The way in which that happens, obviously, it's absolutely appalling. Look, I'm not sitting here saying, "Oh, we need to blame Everton, we need to blame Liverpool." The thing that really pisses me off the most, Pete, is let's get away from the whole culture of that alone in itself. It's pretty obvious we all want to deliver that message, but the other side of it all is, can we stop just pointing fingers in the direction of it's done by certain people from a certain crowd of a fan base? Because it's not the thing in this sport, and the thing that's happened, I think, socially, and I think that a lot of things to do with this, that relate with the way in which this country's ran these days, all the way from that down to the cultures in which we live in, the people in which we live amongst, what I've referred to there about young Olivia and Reece and all that sort of thing. These have been things that, have always been underlying conditions, more or less, for a long time. in our city, but not just because of them happening and they come to the fore of what everybody around the country and world can see and think, oh, let's point our fingers towards Liverpool and the way it is. There are things in this city that I am massively, massively proud of and how far the city has gone in many ways. But the fact that this comes back, it just puts it front and center in front of everybody. Why do we treat each other with such disdain and anger and shit? It's just like it's not humanistic in any way, shape, or form, and it makes you feel sick, makes you feel
Yeah,
tired, and it makes you feel angry. And
yeah,
I'm not just saying that this is everything I point towards the banner that was in the Liverpool end, the style fan in that we've seen before that's been on the Cop that again managed to get in to the away end at Goodison yesterday. I don't want to see that. I think
mm,
I'd still like to think that a high percentage of Liverpool fans don't want to see that either, because what happens is seeing it and people laughing at it saying, "Oh, it's only a flag, it's only a bit of banter."
mm.
It's you're just putting death, the word death, smack in the middle of everyone's faces at a football match.
Yeah,
How on earth does that make any sense? Look, Pete, you deal with or you deal in and amongst a lot of stuff with. Obviously, we'll have a quick word about that to end positively and what we're going to be doing with the Everton Women side of things shortly. But
yeah,
you're in and about a lot of football fans yourself. You're in that sort of football and culture, aren't you?
yeah,
The people you know, the friends you go to the game to. I am too, in terms of what I do for a living and things like that. It's sickening and makes me feel physically sick to see examples of that what I've just mentioned there all over the place. But the fact that it relates to something that is an outlet in all of our regular lives, people in society, it's the things that you do when you're off work, it's the things you do that are away with your day-to-day life, where you go to work, you come home. What are the things you do to enjoy yourself? Football is right at the top of that for all of us. Many of us, people certainly listen to this anyway, and go to football matches. How on earth have we come to a place where such vile, disastrous human dignity and things such as death, the word death, everything that goes around death, how does that end up as anything that is
mm,
in and amongst people's mindset? It's really, really horrible. And I would go as far as saying, and many people wouldn't. Many people probably criticize that I'm saying it, but I don't want to see it. And I go as far as saying I don't want to go to it. If I continue to see stuff like that,
mm,
from the memorial was vandalised by that stupid ticket, the stupid poster that was put on,
mm.
um, by the Dixie Dean statue, wasn't it? What's it called, Pete?
Yeah,
The thing that's there, all the all the blocks that are there, where the names and memorials are of various fans.
yeah. It's like, yeah, I know what you mean. It's like the memorial wall, I
That's
suppose.
it, yeah. For want of a
Yeah,
better term, I know they've called it something
yeah.
else down there, and it's not just
I
about
can actually remember. Yeah,
it's not just
yeah,
about like the memorials of people, but a hell of a lot of them are that. They had the point, didn't they, when they built it, where you could pay for it and buy it, like, and just put whatever messages you wanted to whatever direction you wanted to. You could put it for memorials, you could put it by saying, oh, Dave Downey is an Evertonian. You can do all stuff like that. I'm not pointing at it that it's any way, shape, or form similar to like the Hillsborough Memorial that they have at Anfield and whatnot. It's not the exact same thing, but it's the same direction and feeling towards why people put their words there. And
yeah.
someone just decides to throw a poster about Liverpool potentially playing in the Champions League final next year and whatnot. You
Mm,
know, the the fact that people then start, I think what you see it a lot on social media anyway, and it's something that makes me even more angry in a way, that people will start to like point score with it, use stuff associated. There was one lad yesterday, I won't say his name, who put I his tweet was, "I woke up today," which is more than can be said for Bill Shankly or something like that. It said that to those words, and I was like, "What are you?" He's only a kid, by a kid to say like his late teens. And I replied and said, I'm convinced that you're not fit. Why are you acting like a dickhead? Why are you saying that?
Yeah.
Much the same that, and as you can imagine, the first reply is, "Oh, I got up and Dixie Dean wasn't alive as well." And you're like, stop, keep taking the next step down and down a ladder into pure shite.
Yeah.
It's infuriating, and that's exactly why it perpetuates to different levels of things that you don't want to see in
Yeah.
society. How
And
far does it have to go to see what we've seen in this city happen? With and look, Olivia was 9 years old when she shot dead. You know, there were various other deaths in and around where I live, near Old Swan and West Derby. People
yeah.
dying. Why on earth is that anywhere near football? Something that's supposed to be enjoyed.
Yeah.
It's infuriating. I'm sorry I've gone off on a bit of a monologue there, Pete, but
Oh, it's
like,
important. It's important to say that, Dave. And do you know
yeah,
what? This is the thing, that this mentality of the thing about it as well is that you sort of almost open Pandora's box when these things start happening.
yeah,
You know, just like we saw a few years ago with, Prince Rupert's Tower having, being spray painted, and then the
yeah,
next thing it
yeah,
was the murals and all that, and it's just tit for tat. And it only takes literally a handful of people to do these things, and they sort of think it's great, and they'll
yeah.
they'll tell the
And it's
mates,
not
and they'll get a little
the
video, and but it escalates because of social media. It escalates, and like you
correct.
say, the next thing you see the comments, and it's not just it isn't just it's a small group of people who might actually physically go and do it, but the people who are egging them on, and the people who actually respond to it
Yeah,
in a positive way, feed into it. So people now think it's almost like a status, like to say, well, I've done this and I've done that, and at the end of the day, you're just basically looking like dickheads. And what
mm,
you're doing as well is that you're making us all look feral. Like there's no other word for it, feral. Because I mean, as much as I dislike, say, I don't particularly, I'm not going to be getting a photograph next to a Liverpool.
oh, you've gone there, Pete.
At the end of the day, the idea of going and vandalising it, what does that make our city look like? It makes us look like absolute idiots. It makes us look
Yeah,
pathetic. And that goes both ways. So if I did a rant going back years ago now, probably about 3 or 4 years ago. I did a video rant after the Jurgen Klopp mural was vandalised in town, and then there was a bit of a tit for tat then. And it just seems to come around every now and again that people just decide to do it. And like you say, there's more important things going on in our city at the moment for idiots to be creating more divide over what is essentially a football game. Just because someone happens to be born and support a different club to you doesn't mean that you should then go out and vandalise areas of the city. Like,
yeah, and
what's the
to the
point?
further that Tony made there, that's absolutely spot on. Why does it always seem to attract tragedy and death?
Yeah, yeah,
It's because it's
yeah,
and in my opinion, it's because people seem to think that how low can or how horrible can I make someone feel?
yeah.
You know, how bad can I make them feel? Can I go one worse than them?
But then they hide
Um,
behind this idea that it's
correct.
just like banter. Like
Yeah,
it's well, as if
that's exactly what that lad said I
I'm
was
going to
referring
try and
to there,
offend.
Pete. That young
Yeah,
lad. That's exactly what I was referring to then. He all replies. He was saying, "Oh, relax. It's only a bit of banter." It's not. These are
it's not.
lives, actual human lives. What
Yeah,
the fuck are you playing at?
you can't deliberately try to offend someone and then be shocked when someone's offended. You can't say things like, at the end of the day, like, people, not everything is deliberately meant as an insult. Do you know what I mean? But there are certain things, certain lines you don't cross, and you certainly can't then turn it back on someone for being offended by it, or
Yeah,
for finding it as a disgusting comment to make. Like bringing a Steaua Bucharest flag into the derby. Like, whether you're what they'll try and say is, well, we're just taking a mick about Everton not being in Europe and not being in the European Cup final, or not winning the
yeah,
European Cup
correct.
when they had a great side.
Yeah,
Yeah, but the reason for that is so despicable and so disgusting and so disgraceful.
they know. That's the
How
thing.
can you
When I keep
celebrate
on
that?
spot on. I keep repeating, you're not soft. You're not soft. You're
Yeah,
being a dickhead, but you are not soft. You know the connotations that is linked to.
yeah.
By simply saying it's only a flag for another football club.
Imagine a Juventus fan seeing that flag and
Correct.
knowing the context of why they're putting that flag up.
Correct.
Like,
And
come
like we
on.
say, mate, like we say, it's both clubs. It's every club. You know,
Yeah,
you look at even we play United, but you always hear every single team that come to Goodison, every single team that go to Anfield, when we go away, sign on is the first thing the fans generally go to, and they will say, "Oh, it's only a bit of banter." A bit of
yeah.
banter to certain people means so much worse to others. And how many times in my life in recent years have people said to me, "Oh, you're far too sensitive. Stop being so sensitive." When I've referred to mental health and things like that, um, it does drive you mad. And I'm quite proud of myself that I own a platform like the Blue Room, which goes out to thousands and thousands of people. That we're able to discuss this and openly discuss it as and when we need to. Because, like you said at the very start of this chat, it absolutely needs to be spoken about. And a lot of
Yeah.
people asked me yesterday, Peter, and we'll just finish it out because we haven't got much time left. But I was asked a few times yesterday on social media, especially when Carragher retweeted what I said, and people have said, well, you know, why don't we start trying to have a look at trying to control this by a way of engaging with each other, i.e., Liverpool, certain fan bases, Spirit of Shankly, Blue Union, Blue Room, whatever. You know, the Bullens End view and all that stuff. The Bullens view. Why don't we start doing that? And I said that yes, I'd be more than happy to take the time to do that. More than happy. But it takes much more than just that. It takes much more than just large fan bases, large social media, podcasts, videos, YouTube, whatever. It would actually take the clubs to get involved in it as well. And I just say I certainly don't think that that is there. Even the fact that we saw yesterday that both clubs released a joint statement, which didn't
Yeah.
go as far as to suggest what the racism, vandalism that happens at Anfield. Because the thing is, as well, Pete, when that come out, first thing people are saying, because they will not go as far as to say that this is the fault of anybody they know or the fault of anybody that they support, is that, you know, oh, there was a horrible racial word was put on one of the pictures of the fans, what
Mm.
pictures of Liverpool players, and it was written in blue. It was the day before the Merseyside derby. Of course, it's going to be assumed that it's an Everton fan that's gone and done that. But
Yeah.
nobody will be accountable, and that word accountable. We've said that word quite a few times, haven't we, Pete? Throughout this hour and a half that we've done, basically. But it'll only happen. It'll only change when people are willing to meet at the table, but not just because, like, you know, I know, I'm not ashamed to say it, I know people over at the Anfield Wrap. I worked at the Anfield Wrap for a long, long time. Be very, very easy to organise a chat with them. Very, very easy to do so. But that's nowhere near enough. It would need clubs involved, not just Everton, Liverpool, by the way. You know, maybe our city-wise, of course, but the wider problem and issue with this sport is beyond what people are able to do. Certainly at a fan level, anyway.
Mm.
But you know, you live in hope, don't you, that these things change. But I don't want anything to do with football if things like this continue.
Yeah. Well, you can go, I tell you one thing about women's football is that these types of rivalries and these types of things aren't prominent. So that's one of the reasons. One of the things that I do actually find very enjoyable about going to Walton Park, is the fact that
Pete,
it is a friendlier, a lot, it is a friendlier, more welcoming atmosphere. And it's not a nirvana where everyone's like singing along together or anything like that. There are
hope, yeah,
rivalries
yeah.
with opposition fans, but it's nowhere near the level of some of the things that we see
I, I
in the
can't
Premier League.
believe
And
I can't believe how beautifully you've segued into talking about what we absolutely need to mention in the couple of minutes that we've got left. And that is, we're delighted to do so. And we've been banging on about it for a while and sort of referring to it and dropping drips and drops all over the podcast about what you're going to be doing this coming season, and we're not far away from it happening. But you're going to be running the Everton Women's side of everything we do content-wise, because you'll be going to most games, you're going to be in and amongst most players. Sarah Halpin as well, of course, has long been linked with the Blue Room for many years, we're proud to say. And the season starts next week, so we're going to have a preview pod coming up in the coming days, aren't we, Pete? Tell us all about it.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, Dave. I'm looking forward to the season getting started. I've had numerous discussions with Sarah. Obviously, with her working for Everton, she won't be able to do all of.
Day off, by the way, every single day.
Oh, I don't think she does. To be honest, she's very, very, very busy. But she's as I say, she's obviously bringing us absolutely fantastic content from the official channels. And she'll jump on with me as often as she can. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, Dave. Looking forward to the start of the season. We've made a number of very good signings. The new manager, Brian Sorensen, I was lucky enough to meet him a couple of weeks ago. I've met him a couple of times now, actually. I met him during the Euros as well when we were off watching England at Old Trafford. So yeah, I'm really optimistic for the season. I've spoke to a couple of the players as well and let them know about the podcast. So I'm hoping we'll be going through Everton and hopefully getting some of the players on to discuss some of the games.
We absolutely will be doing that. And
and I'm going to try and, we'll be doing post-match sort of interviews. We'll be doing updates from the games and basically bringing as much content as possible to try and shine a light on our Everton women's team. There's plenty of new signings, but also a lot of players who've been there for a long, long time and players who absolutely love Everton Football Club, who are proud to wear our badge. So it'd be fantastic to see as many people down at Walton Park next Sunday. It's a 1 o'clock kickoff. If you're a season ticket holder at Goodison, you get you can actually get a free ticket for Walton Park for every game this season. Bring the kids along, have a great time, meet the players after the game. As I say, if you want a family-friendly atmosphere, with a very good singing section, I might add, by the way, with the official supporters club, that you can get involved with, come down.
Sports Social Podcast Network.